The city of Oria looks a lot like it got its teeth kicked out. The barricades here is no longer a neat circle, instead it's riddled with gaps. The Rising must have run out of white walls to enclose this still zone, so they've had to use the metal fencing instead. I see the hot glint of it in the spring sun as we fly over. I try not to look in the direction of the hill. Others Rising officers in black wave us up at us. We're flying lower now, and I can see people looting and pushing against weak places in the fence. The barricade is about to be breached. Even from up here, I can feel the panic. The situation has deteriorated too much to land. Our commander says, we'll do a supply drop. I have to admit that there have been times when I wish something bad would happen to people in the boroughs of Oria. Like the time the society took me away and no one but Cassia ran after me. Or when the people laughed during the showing because they didn't understand death. I never wanted to see them die, but I would have liked for them to know how it felt to be afraid. I wanted them to know that their easy lives had a cost, but this is terrible to see. Over the past few weeks, the Rising has lost their grip on the people and the plague. They won't say what's happened, but something has. Even the activists and traders seem to have completely disappeared. I have no way to get a message to Cassia. One of these days I'm not going to be able to resist flying to Central. The most secure area is located in front of City Hall, says the commander. We'll make the drop there. Are we dropping all our supplies at City Hall? I asked the commander. What about the boroughs? Everything in front of City Hall, he says. It's the safest way. I don't agree. We need to disperse the supplies, or it'll be a bloodbath. The people are already trying to break through the barricade. When they see us drop, they're going to want to get inside even more. I don't know how long the Rising can hold off and to use violence in situations like this. Will they send the fighters in, or like they do in Arcadia? Indy and I are the last in the formation. We do a circle around again while the others make their drops. We're outside of the city proper now. Moving back in through the boroughs. As we do, I see people coming out of their homes and watch us fly. They've obeyed the Rising commands to stay put and wait instead of coming to the barricade. And it means they'll likely starve, while the others at the walls fight over supplies we've brought. I feel a fierce, unexpected surge to sorrow and loyalty to the people in the boroughs. They try to follow orders and do the right thing. Is their fault everything is such a mess? No. Yes. Prepare the drop, commander says. We've never done this before. Left supplies without landing. But we've trained for it. There's a hatch in the belly of the ship where we can let our cargo go. Caleb, I say, switching to the speaker, and it goes down to the hold. Are you ready? There's no answer. Caleb? I'm ready, he says, but his voice sounds off. I'm the pilot this time, so I'm in charge. Go see what's wrong with him, I tell Indy. She nods and walks over to the hold. Her balance perfect, even when the motion of the ship. I hear her open the hatch and hold and go down to the ladder. Is there a problem, the commander asks. I don't think so, I tell him. Caleb doesn't look good, Indy says a moment later, reappearing from the hold. I think he's sick. I'm all right, Caleb says, but his voice still has a hint of strain in it. I think I'm having a reaction to something. Do not drop your cargo, the commander says. Return immediately to base. Indy looks at me and raises an eyebrow. Is he serious? I repeat, he says. Do not drop cargo. Report immediately back to the base in Cadmus. I look at Indy and she shrugs her shoulders. I ease the ship around and we fly over the people. I was coming in low for a drop, and so I can see their faces turn up and watch us. They look like baby birds waiting for food. Here, I say to Indy, gesturing for her to take over the controls. I go down to check on Caleb. He's not strapped in anymore. He stands at the back of the hold, his hands pressed against the side of the ship. his head bent down, every muscle tight in agony. When he looks at me, I see fear in his eyes. Caleb, I say, what's happening? Nothing, he says. It's fine. Go back up above. You're sick, I say. But with what? We can't get the plague unless something went wrong. Caleb, I say, what's happening? He shakes his head. He won't tell me. The ship shifts a little and he stumbles. You know what's going on, I say, but you won't tell me. How am I supposed to help you? There's nothing you can do, Caleb says. You shouldn't even be here anyways if I'm sick. He's right. I turn to leave. When I sit down, Indy raises her eyebrow at me. Block the hold, I say. Don't go back down. We're almost back to Cadmus before Caleb speaks again. We're flying over the long, flat field of Tanya, and I am, of course, thinking of Cassia and her family when Caleb's voice comes over the speaker. I've changed my mind, he says. There is something you can do. I need you to write something down for me. I don't have any paper, I say. I'm flying the ship. You don't have to write it now, he says later. All right, I say. But first, you tell me what's happening. The commander is silent. Is he listening? I don't know, Caleb says. Then I can't write, I tell him. Silence. Tell me this, I say to Caleb. What was in those cases you kept bringing back when we delivered the cures? Tubes. Caleb says immediately, surprising me. We brought out tubes. Which tubes? I ask. When I think I know the answer, they fit in the cases perfectly. They're about the same size as the cures. I should have figured it out long ago. The tubes is the tissue preservation samples in them, Caleb says. I'm right. But I don't understand the reasoning. Why? I ask Caleb. The Rising took over the storage facilities when the Society kept the tubes, he says. But some members of the Rising wanted their family samples under their own personal control. The pilot provided the service for them. That's not fair, I say. If the Rising really is for everyone, they should have given all the samples back. Pilot Markingham, our commander, says, your engineer is in speculation about your commanding officer, which almost is insubordination. I order you to cease this line of conversation. Caleb doesn't say anything. So does the Rising think they can bring people back? I ask. The commander starts to speaking again, but this time I talk over him, and so does Caleb. No, Caleb says. They know they can't. They know the Society can't either. They just want the samples like insurance. I don't understand it. I say someone like the pilot should have seen enough death to know the tubes aren't worth anything. They would have a waste of resources doing something so stupid. Yes, the pilot knows you can't bring people back with the samples, Caleb says. Not everyone does. He uses this to his advantage, he exhales. The reason I'm telling you all this, he says, is that you need to believe in the pilot. If you don't, we're going to lose everything. I didn't know I was so important, I say. You're not, he says, but you and Indy are two of the best pilots. And lead everyone he can get before this all is over. What's this? I ask. The plague. The Rising. You're right, the pilot does need all the help he can get. He hasn't managed to get anything under control so far. You don't even know him, Caleb says. He sounds angry. That's good. That's a little more life in his voice. I don't, I say, but you do, don't you? You knew him before the Rising came to power. We're both from Cadmus, Caleb says. I grew up on the army base where he was stationed. He was one of the pilots who flew over the other lands. He took more people out to the Stone Village and the other pilot. He never got caught. He was the obvious choice to lead the Rising when it was time for a new pilot. I lived in the Outer Providence, I say. I never heard of the Stone Village or the other lands. They're real, Caleb says. The other lands are the places far past enemy territory. The Stone Villagers were built by anomalies along the edge of the Outer Providence. The Society came to power, and the villages are like the stepping stones in the river. That's how they got their name. They run north to south, and they built a day journey apart from one another. When you reach the last one, you have crossed through enemy territory. if you want to go on to the other lands. They really haven't heard of the villagers? Not by name, I say. But my mind's racing. The farmers in the carving are far away from the other anomalies, but did they have a map to the other village marked on the mountains? That's the village. They could have been the southernmost of the stone villages. The final one it's possible. So what did the pilot do? I asked. He saved people, Caleb said. He and some of the other pilots would run people from society out as far as the last stone village. He made citizens pay to get out. He helped aberrations and anomalies too. That's who carved in the ship, isn't it? I say, understanding people who are hiding there when the pilot flew them out. It's stupid of them, Caleb says, a hint of anger in his voice. They could have gotten people in trouble. I think he meant it as a tribute, I say, remembering the picture carved on one of our earlier ships. The pilot giving the people water. That's what it looked like to me. It was all stupid, Caleb says. Do people live in the villages anymore? I ask. I don't know. Caleb says they might have all left to other lands by now. The pilot tried to get them to join the rising, but they wouldn't. Sounds like the anomalies who lived in the carving. They don't join the rising either. It makes me wonder what happened to Anna's people when they reached the village we saw marked on the map. Did they meet the stone villagers there? Did the group have enough in common to get along? Did the people living in the stone villages help the people from the carving, or did they drive them away, or worse? What happened to Hunter and Eli? Other kids grew up telling stories about the pilot, Caleb said, but I grew up watching him fly. I know he's the one who can lead us out of this. Caleb sounds terrible. The pain's winning out. I can hear it thick in his voice. And I know what's happening. He's going still. He's supposed to be immune. Something happened to the plague. This new version of it. One of our immunities can't protect against. I want you to write down everything I said about the pilot, Caleb says, including what I believe in him until the end. Is this the end? I asked. Silence. Caleb. Nothing. Did he go still? Indy asked. Or decide he didn't want to talk anymore? I don't know, I say. She stands up as if she's about to go down into the hole. No, I say. Indy, you can't risk exposure to whatever it is. He didn't tell you much, Indy says, sitting back. I bet there was plenty of people who knew about the tubes in the pilot. We didn't, I remind her. You believe Caleb because has those notches in his boots, he says, but it doesn't mean that he was in the camps. Anyone could have cut their boots like that. I think he was, I say, but you don't know that he was. No. He is right about the pilot, though, Indy says. So you believe Caleb, I say, about the pilot, at least. I believe myself about the pilot, Indy says. I know that he's real. She leans in closer to me, and for a minute I think she might kiss me again, like she did all those weeks ago. The villages are real too, she says, and the other lands, all of it. Her voice is every bit as impassionate as Caleb's was. And I understand her. Indy loves me, but she's a survivor. When I told her I wouldn't run with her, she turned to something else and kept going. I believe in Cassia. Indy believes in the rising and the pilot. We both have found something to pull us through. Could have been different, I say, almost under my breath. If I'd kissed Indy after she kissed me. If I hadn't known Cassia before I met Indy. But it's not, Indy says, and she's right.